Well, welcome to another episode of the AgCulture Podcast. And today I have the privilege of interviewing Brandon Panebianco, who is the technical manager for Living Water Aquaculture. I'm really excited because you're the first person on the podcast in almost 100 episodes from the aquaculture community. So this is going to be really good. And I'll probably show the most ignorance that I ever have on any sector that we've had on the show today. So bear with me. But welcome, Brandon. I'm really excited to have a great discussion today.
Thanks so much for having me. What a great opportunity to be able to come on and talk aquaculture. So yeah, really exciting.
Yeah, well, welcome to the podcast. Talk to us a little bit about Living Water Aquaculture. Just give us a broad overview for now, and then we're going to dive a little deeper into some of the details of what makes it unique.
Yeah, sure. So Living Water Aquaculture, we grow red claw. So that's a red claw crayfish. So I guess it's similar to clawed lobster over in the States there. So we grow that in fresh water. We've been operating for 3 years now, and we've got a grow out facility in North Queensland in Australia. So it's around 50 hectares in size. We've got about five hectares of production area that we grow lobsters in. So we're slowly building up our business, and we've been operating now, as I said, for 3 years, but we're 3 years into an industry that's been running for 40 years. And so historically, the industry's been a little bit slow in their growth, and it sort of peaked in around the early 2000s and then stagnated around 80 tonne and then have slowly dropped off in production. So what we're looking at doing now is bringing a fresh approach to the red claw industry in how we're operating and trying to innovate and grow that along the way. So on our site, we have 27 grow out ponds, and we compile that from having our broodstock on site. And we also have a hatchery facility at a university in town, James Cook University, that we work quite closely with for our research. So we are developing the hatchery technology to assist us with the grow out component of the farm. Traditionally in aquaculture, it's quite a streamlined process where you have your broodstock, your hatchery, and your nursery operation that then feeds into your grow out. So currently on the farm, we're building a broodstock facility. This is something new to the red claw industry and hasn't traditionally been done as part of the innovation that we're bringing to the sector. And we've got plans there to develop a nursery as well that then feeds into the grow out side of the farm. So we're still a very much emerging farm, very, very young in its development. So it's a really exciting time to be a part of it and expanding into what we can do with the industry.
Yeah, well, great. Well, what brought you to aquaculture in the first place? I believe you've worked with several other species of lobsters in the past, correct?
Yeah. So growing up in North Queensland, we're right on the doorstep to the Great Barrier Reef. So I've spent a lot of time fishing and diving and really love the aspect of the lifestyle that comes with aquaculture. And in a lot of ways, it's the same as farming. It's a lifestyle job. People don't really get into farming to make money. You get into it because you love it and you're passionate about it. And if you're good at what you do, that sort of comes as a byproduct. But yeah, just the lifestyle of it, the people that we've sort of met along the way. It's a really exciting industry to be a part of in working with different animals. So I've worked with barramundi, which is a native Australian species here, white flesh fish, and then tropical rock lobsters, which is a spiny rock lobster, and slipper lobsters as well, before now working with crayfish. So there's a lot of challenges that come, like any type of farming, and a lot of bottlenecks that you have to work through. But the exciting part about working with these animals is that challenge and being able to overcome some of those hurdles that you face along the way, and especially breaking new ground. It's a really exciting part of it. I've worked in the industry now for over 10 years, and for 10 years of that, I've been developing species and trying to understand what works and try and put some of those basic fundamentals into place to see how we best grow them and how that works. So yeah, really exciting industry to be a part of.
That's awesome. What are the big differences between species of lobster? That's my ignorance coming out, but I'd love to know, like, what's that look like, especially from a management style, if you're trying to grow them?
So that's a great question, and the answer is it's huge. It's really vast, and I always bring things back to the biology of the animal and where it would naturally live in the environment. And they're so vast and different. So how you manage each species is completely contrasting. So, for example, I worked with tropical rock lobsters for over 5 years, and they're kind of considered the holy grail of aquaculture. And that still isn't completely cracked, I guess, in how to do that. But the tropical rock lobsters will have a hatchery phase that goes for over 5 months, which is an incredibly long period of time for any hatchery species in aquaculture. When you compare barramundi and prawns and red claw, that's 1 month. So that's just to get a juvenile. So it's incredibly long, incredibly expensive, and incredibly technical. Whereas when you compare it to then a red claw crayfish, you've got a month in the hatchery and then another 2 weeks in their craylings that you can stock into your pond. So that just comes back to the biology of the animal and in how we operate then. So as I said before, the management you have to have around some of the tropical rock lobster stuff has to be really stringent, high technical, high ability to monitor and control your water quality parameters. Whereas a species like red claw crayfish, because of their natural environment, they will sort of sit in pools in, I guess, outback Queensland and those sort of places, so they can handle a wide variety of water quality and poor water quality as well. So it means that they're a lot more forgiving compared to other species. So it makes it a great species to be able to work on. And I always say it's about working out what you can get away with and what you can't. And that's a really big part of it. You don't want to be spending money on things that aren't going to make a difference and they're just going to take time away from you doing something else. So understanding what their basic requirements are in the wild and how you adapt that into an approach for farming is a really critical part in changing between species. But there is a lot of crossover between species and what was the same for tropical rock lobsters, which is oceanic, is the same for red claw as well in some ways. So there definitely is crossover, but it's vastly different in other ways as well.
How is the marketing handled in the industry? A lot of industries have co-ops, or you just bring your commodity to a processor and they process it. What's that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So with red claw crayfish, it's, as I said, it's an old sort of industry, and what we sort of noticed was we had small farms. We have about 30 farms in the industry in Australia, but only producing, I think they only recorded 22 tonne of product across those 30 farms. So we're expecting that there's probably a little bit more produced, but everyone does it independently. And so because there's only small amounts being produced from each farm, you'll find they'll go direct to restaurants or wholesalers. So for red claw crayfish, we're selling it as a live product. So for us now, for us building that market, we're looking domestically, but we have the capacity to deal both directly with wholesalers, but also restaurants, which is a really cool part of it. So we sell everything live, and that sort of helps with the shelf life of the animal and how the chefs are able to prepare it and hold it. So that's a really great aspect of the product, that it's hardy enough to keep. And we'll do drop arounds into Townsville to the restaurants and wholesalers every week, which is a really great part of it, that you can get that direct engagement with the chefs and the people who are using the product and see their excitement with it. And it is really, as I said, it's a new breath of fresh air for the product, because we're really now understanding how the product is seen in the market and how the product is seen with chefs. Traditionally, it was done where the industry was getting around $25 a kilo Australian, so that's probably like $12.50, $15 US a kilo, which is quite a low value product for a lobster. Whereas when you compare to a tropical rock lobster, which is a spiny lobster, they're getting around 100 US into Hong Kong. So there's a huge price point difference, but we're really finding now the industry for a long time hasn't been able to meet supply. Meet the demand and have that supply there. So what we're really working hard on is the marketing side of it, and going, well, let's have a look at our pricing. Let's make sure that we're competitive, because we have a product that is in high demand but in short supply. So we're now bridging the gap with our pricing between some of those premium lobsters, because it's sort of really highly in the restaurants and in the quality of product that it is, and trying to get a bit of feedback and understanding from the chefs about, okay, where can we come in as a price point? And that really maximizes the farm gate price. And that obviously helps a lot where you're maximizing the money you're putting into the money you're getting out.
Are you getting any feedback from a quality standpoint or size standpoint or anything like that from the chefs as well?
Yeah, so quality is really good. And every time we come into a new restaurant, I went into a new restaurant and dropped off some samples last week. You can see the look on the chef's faces, how excited they are to work with the product. You know, a lot of people have worked with it before, once or twice, and you're bringing that product in and you can just see the look on their faces, how excited they are to work with it, which is a really great thing from a farming point of view to see the excitement and the passion that the chefs have. So they think of it really highly. It's quite a delicate product in the sense of it's not a really strong seafoody flavor. So it lends itself well to being quite versatile and used in a number of different dishes and different ways of cooking. So it's really liked by chefs because they can put their own touch on it. And if they're excited about the product and they're excited about how they can utilize it, then that transfers over into the eating experience as well. So it's something that we're seeing. There's a really good acceptance by the local community here. A lot of people buying the dishes that the chefs are putting up, which is a great feedback mechanism in itself that we can then continue to push more product into our local markets, which is 50 kilometres from the farm. So it's great to be able to bring that in there and see by people purchasing it how the product's being received.
Oh, that's great. Well, let's go back toward the production side of things. You work alongside Nathan Klesby, who's the founder of Living Water Aquaculture, and you guys are recognized in the industry for tackling some big issues and had gotten some publicity from that. So, talk to us a little bit about that. Maybe back up even before that. I know you talked about the hatchery, the brooding, and the grow out phase, but give us a little more detail into maybe some of the challenges as you're discussing what you and Nathan are working on.
Yeah, sure. So we'll start in the hatchery. Everything sort of starts from the hatchery phase. So obviously you have your brood stock before that, and we'll get an egg supply. So how it works in the red claw industry for the hatchery is we'll have our females and our males brood stock will pair, mate, and then we'll physically strip the eggs off each female that are fertilized. So a really big female around 250 grams might have up to 800 to 1,000 eggs.
Oh, wow.
Which for aquaculture and lobsters is quite a low fecundity,
okay.
But they're a really large egg. So it's probably one of the limitations that you have to have quite a lot of brood stock to get the number of eggs required to stock your farm. So we'll have a number of eggs that we'll strip off and they'll be brought into the hatchery, disinfected. And where one of the bottlenecks is that we've been able to overcome was we were getting this bacteria on the eggs and the craylings that after 6 days, basically the infection would take over and we would be losing craylings and losing a significant number. So traditionally, or early hatchery production was seeing around 10% of craylings make it through. Whereas now the methods that we've been able to put into place, we're consistently seeing around 80% survival through the hatchery, which is a really big part of the development of the species. Being able to have consistent seed stock supply and being able to overcome that hurdle is a really major impact. So
that's an 8x increase. That's huge.
Yeah, that's right. And it's that consistency in supply then. That's a really big one. Yeah. So we then have the capacity to stock our own farm, but then also have another revenue stream and stock other farms as well, and being able to have a little bit of control over the quality of stock going into the market. So that's a really big bottleneck that we've been able to overcome, and a lot of hard work's been done even previous to Living Water Aquaculture picking up the hatchery technology. So there's been a lot of farms and a lot of farmers that have helped us along the way get to that point. So we wanted to acknowledge them. But it's certainly a developing space, and over the 3 years that Nathan and I've been working on it, it's something that's come a long way. So basically after 28 days, the eggs will hatch, and then we'll have another 2 molts, so around 2 weeks, and then they'll become a crayling. So at that point there, at the moment, we're stocking them out into an earthen pond in the farm. So our ponds are generally around 1/4 of a hectare. And quite shallow, only about 1 metre to 1.3 metres deep. They're a two-dimensional animal in the sense they'll sort of mostly stick on the floor, but then we do provide a hide structure, so areas for them to sort of hide away in little nooks and crannies in the pond. Traditionally, in the wild, they're always looking for somewhere to hide. So like I said before, it's about recreating what's happening in the wild. So we'll stock those craylings out, and then depending on the seasons, how many summers we get, generally it's around a 9-month to a 12-month cycle. So depending on when they're stocked in the year, we'll generally take around 9 to 12 months to get animals to harvest size and get them into the market. So our main market sizes are a 65 to 90 gram animal range, and above 90, which is sort of our larger premium product there. So we'll basically try and manage a pond so that we get a certain amount of rebreeding, which I'll touch on in a sec, but also a good proportion of animals to market size.
Okay.
I'll probably dive a little bit deeper into the traditional methods as well, and how we've sort of been able to, I guess, look at it and change some of that. So one of the big advantages for red claw aquaculture is that you can breed them quite easily. And so what the industry relies on is essentially being able to put males and females into a pond and they'll breed and basically create their own young quite easily. And it's probably a strength, but it's also at some ways a weakness, because what you can get is you can throw, let's say, 50 males and about 50 females and 10 males into a pond and get them breeding. But it's really inconsistent with how many animals that you'll actually get out at the end of your crop cycle. So by having a hatchery operation, it gives you a lot more consistency in knowing that you can stock those animals into a pond and you're getting a more consistent known number of animals out. In all farming or any business, variability is the killer. You need to be able to be as consistent as you can to have consistent supply and consistent cash flow. So being able to develop that hatchery technology and move away from the traditional approach of just throwing animals into a pond to breed and see how they go, essentially, which is a big part of how the industry's been for the last 40 years, is a really exciting innovation that we're bringing. And there's a real opportunity to develop that further. So we're looking at building a nursery on site at Living Water Aquaculture, and that's done traditionally in all other sectors of aquaculture, and we're definitely seeing across the board in aquaculture, companies are actually growing animals out longer in the nursery phase. So the reason why people don't use hatcheries or nurseries for overly long periods is that it's quite expensive. You have a lot of pump heating or chilling infrastructure in there, and so it takes time and it's expensive. So it's easier to sort of get a crayling out or an animal out and just put it in the pond. It's cheaper, it's quicker. But what we're seeing in the shift in the industry is to stocking larger animals into a pond and getting better survival. So while it might cost you a bit more in the upfront costs, we're really seeing better survivals across the industry for all species. So it's a nice change that we're excited to bring into the company. And by having our own broodstock shed, our own facility there that we can hold and phase shifts animals so we can breed them out of season, it's another step into having consistent supply and that known number, as I said, stocked into a pond and getting them out at harvest size 9 to 12 months later.
So you said you're at 80%. The industry before was at 10%, made it to craylings. 80. Now you're at 80%. What did that look like in that later stage for survivability before you implemented some of the things that you guys are doing today? Because what you were talking about earlier was just the egg to the crayling, right?
Yeah. So to answer that question, it's really hit and miss, because you can get sometimes prior to that, you can get sometimes where you go to harvest a pond and you have less than 100 kilos in a pond. And a lot of the farmers, when we were coming along the journey, said, as you're building new ponds, don't be shocked when you go to harvest that pond for the first time that there's nothing in there, because it's sort of like a good wine where your pond has to mature. And it may be the same for your cattle grazing and stuff as well. It's like you have to let that area mature and grow and have its own ecosystem in there. So we're still actually completing some of the first pond rotations as well. So what we're finding at the moment is there is that variability still there as the farm matures. As I said, it's only been 3 years that we've had this site, and I would say it's a previous red claw site that we'd purchased. So there was some small ponds, but we've expanded out on it as well. So it's really hit and miss. So like I said, it can be under 100 kilos, but then we've pulled out over 600 kilos out of some of those ponds. So I think a really important part of that is understanding the fundamentals of why. And it comes back to the science, even though it's basic in some ways. There's so much science that underpins everything that happens or explains what we do. So the ability to sort of capture some of those fundamental things of why a pond performs well and why maybe it doesn't, and understanding what the difference is there is a really important part to scaling up the industry and making sure that we're looking for around 4 tonne per hectare of production. So that would be quite a good recovery. Some of your prawn or shrimp farmers will be getting somewhere around 20 tonne per hectare or higher. So it's not a species that will traditionally be in large production, and that again comes back to the biology of them. Prawns, fish, often the schooling animals, whereas red claw are not. They're more solitary, and we know that there's only so far that we'll be able to push the species in density, but we're looking at how we can innovate and how we can bring these new technologies and apply them into the industry to really push that as far as we can go.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. Are you doing some of that work then with that university in town as well? Are they collaborating with you guys on that?
Yeah, definitely. So we work pretty closely with James Cook University in Townsville. Nathan and I both studied there, so it's a great pathway for people into the industry up here. They're doing a lot of work with us on the nutritional side of things, so the feed. And I'd say the feed is a really big, not sticking point, but it's a really big area of improvement for us. It's a feed that's been developed for a long period of time, but we feed our feed into water where the red claw are, but the feed only has a stability of 10 minutes before it starts breaking down, which is a really big challenge for us. So we're working through stabilizing that feed so that it's available for those animals longer periods of the day, but also working through different methods of feeding. So feeding multiple times a day to give them more access to the feed, and working through some of these bottlenecks that currently, I guess, are holding the industry back a little bit. So JCU are doing a lot of work in that space for us at the moment, and they are really good at collaborating with industry, with feed manufacturers as well to help get a product to market that is actually going to help. And sometimes in universities you can get caught up a little bit in research and stuff that doesn't actually fall back to impacting on the farmers, but JCU does a really good job in applying that research and working with all the parties there to get a great outcome. So JCU also has a very good genetics program. So that's something that we're really excited to work with and understand how that benefits us and the industry overall. There's some really exciting things coming out of there at the moment. So yeah, it's a bit of a watch this space and see where we can take it.
Now, with being such a small niche sector compared to cattle farming or those type of things in Australia, is there a lot of focus on sustainability, environmental impact, those type of things on what you guys are doing, or is that pretty non-existent because the industry is so small?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the way all industry across the world is moving, the sustainability factor has to be an important part of your business. And Red Claw have really, really high credibility when it comes to sustainability. And that's one of our really big, I guess, selling points and entry points into the market. So that feed that I mentioned is a plant-based feed, essentially. And one of the big, I guess, knocks on aquaculture is that in the feed, they use a lot of fish meal and fish oil. So basically harvesting a fish from the wild to then incorporate into feed and feed to other fish or animals. We don't use any fish meal or fish oil. The animals just don't need it. They're an omnivorous species, so they can eat plant or meat products. So what our diet is mostly comprised of different grains. And we'll also use byproducts, animal byproducts. So say chicken feather meal or a blood and bone meal that essentially is a waste product, and that is incorporated into the feed to lift the protein level. So that's a really big selling point for us, that it has really high sustainability credentials from that point of view. And also our farm, we don't discharge water into the environment. we're a farm where we have our ponds, we have our reservoirs and our water storage area, and we'll top up with our bore water into the ponds to counter the evaporation. But we have minimal to no impact on the surrounding environment around us. So from those points of view, it's a really strong case for sustainability. And it's a great product because there's a lot of other species out there where, you have to grow at high density and you have to exchange your water through. So you're using a lot of water from the environment and you're really strictly monitoring the water that you're putting out back into the environment. But the requirements of our species, we don't have to do that, and we can manage it in a way that we can really simplify the operation. And it's great because the fact that when a market that you're trying to enter wants to know what are your sustainability credentials, to be able to say, hey, we're having next to no impact on the broader environment, it's a huge advantage for the species.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So looking long-term, Living Waters Aquaculture, what you and Nathan are working on, what does that look like in your mind long-term? If you have a big vision and it comes to fruition, what does that look like?
Great question. I guess we're both pie in the sky thinkers, so we both think really big, and we probably have to keep each other in check a little bit sometimes. Nate's probably a bit more of a realist than I am. I'm a bit of an idealist there. So I think for us, it's really the one step at a time approach into building that vision. So right now we've still got another 2.5 years to go in our R&D phase. So where we're at the moment is, as I said, building that broodstock facility, wanting to build our nursery facility and getting our ponds that we have working and producing as efficiently as we can. So it's a lot of mistakes that we see businesses make where they overcapitalize too early and try and get too big too quick and don't have the production system and processes down packed. So what we're looking at is the next 2.5 years of really establishing how we produce our animal efficiently, what's the maximum we can get out of the ponds, and then looking at expanding. We have an extra 15 hectares of production area that we can potentially develop, and we're at the maximum of our developed area agreement with the Australian government as we are now with 5.5 hectares, but we have extra room that we can develop and expand. So that's a really interesting part of the next step, but it's so important that we get this right and make sure that we have something that we can scale, that we know how to do it. And we're not a business who's wanting to build really fast. We're wanting to get it right, build slowly, add ponds, have incremental gains, and be able to sort of do a lot of things ourselves and have the control so that we can learn. We just really want to learn on how we can develop this industry, and we expect that some of the learnings we have that can then flow over into the entire industry. We've only been in the industry for 3 years and producing for slightly less than that, but we're already expected to produce a quarter of the tonnage of red claw in Australia this year, albeit not a huge industry, but for a very new player in the game and the trajectory we're on, that's really exciting to be able to expand that. I touched on before, a lot of the farms are quite established and a bit older farms, so it's nice to have a new player coming into the game and new innovation coming in that hopefully flows over back into other farms that other farms have helped us get into the industry, and certainly we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those people who are kind enough to share their knowledge and information, and excited to see someone new coming into it. So that would be the goal for us is get our processes right, expand our own farm, and then whether we look at more farms or at least bringing on people to work with in the future to help develop the industry and grow it as a whole. Where while every business has to be money minded, it's not our forefront that we have to make sales. We have to push product out the door so we can get cash flow. It's about getting it right and making sure that we're taking on a big challenge, but making sure that pays off because we've done the right things and we haven't gone too quickly to make the industry what it can be and keep pushing the boundaries on that.
No, I think that's great perspective. A lot of times, as you said, there's people just go full tilt forward and focus on increasing numbers year over year and seeing that huge growth, and they don't get the infrastructure behind it right, and they ultimately fail. So I think that's a great words of wisdom there.
Yeah, and I think the other side of it too, like all industries, you have to look at how you can value add, or you have to look at how you can get more out of your product. So I touched on before, like there's high demand and low supply into the market. So even now, redefining what that looks like into the market and pricing, and we're now at a point with our production expanding and what we can supply into the market that we can actually pick and choose a little bit to make that dollar go further, essentially, and who we choose to deal with. But getting direct feedback from chefs is really important, and in where their time is consumed as well. So we have a purging system on site. So basically we'll harvest them and then let them sit in the purging system for 2 to 3 days. So what that means is anything that's in their digestive tract, they'll basically pass through. So you're not like getting a shrimp or a prawn where you've got that fecal trail in the middle. And we're looking at ways where we can continue to add value and add money to that product that we're putting out the door. So that might be in future building processing facilities on site so we can process them and value add as well, and making sure that we're getting as much as we can out of that site and out of that product. And as I said before, traditionally the price has been quite low, and really pushing that now and understanding, hey, if we were able to get an extra $15 a kilo on what we're traditionally getting, you have to sell a lot less stock to make the same amount of money, or you get a lot more value out of it in the end. So understanding where that will go in the industry is something that we're keen to look into. Exporting is not traditionally been done for red claw out of Australia, but we've had some interest there in neighbouring countries to see where that can go. So that's another one we're really keen to see where we can develop that sort of market and see where it keeps going, because it's not going to be a high yielding product overall compared to other aquaculture species, but making sure that we can make that product go as far as we can is going to be a really big part of the business for the next 5 years.
Are you looking at really blowing up one aspect of the business, like maybe the hatchery, and making that even bigger than what you guys can handle, so you can have offshoot farms that work with you in some sort of cooperation? That's
a great question. So the answer is nothing's off the table, essentially, and seeing where we can get to. The hatchery, as I said before, they take a bit of time. So it'll kind of depend on the scale of the business, but the opportunity to supply the entire industry with seed stock and I guess as a business have that position of power is very appealing. So we're definitely mindful of that. And as I said before, we do supply other farms in the industry with seed stock there that they stock into their ponds. So again, another revenue source there. We currently have our hatchery at James Cook University, and like I said before, partnering with them on a number of projects. So that's great to be facilitated there. And it's also from a biosecurity point of view, another separation out from the farm. But yeah, the capacity to be able to produce for the entire industry and have another revenue source there, and I guess a level of control, but also flow over of genetics into the industry. So by simply having better genetics, as you know, it just improves the whole process, and people are growing more for the same amount of effort. So
right.
We look at it as anything that comes back into the industry is beneficial for the whole industry. It's not just pigeonholed into our success, which unfortunately a lot of other sectors are like that, where people aren't willing to share, and there's always that competitive advantage that people want to have. But yeah, we're a big believer in making sure that we share what we can, and there'll always be trade secrets with any farm, right? But yeah, being able to make sure that the improvements do flow over into the industry, and that's an exciting part about it.
Well, Brandon, really appreciate you being on the episode today. How can people find out more about Living Water Aquaculture and what you and Nathan are doing?
Yeah, so we have a website, livingwateraquaculture.com.au, and we're also on Instagram. So have a look on there. You'll see a bit of content there from us every now and again. First and foremost, we're farmers, and we probably need to pick up on the Instagram a little bit more. But yeah, have a look there. So that's always a good place to see what's happening and a bit of a progress on where the farm's up to.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, and best of luck.
No worries. Thanks very much. Cheers.